absolutely. Bring it on. That's
Mm-hmm.
why we thought we would do this latest live stream, yeah, as an introduction to 2025 and get people thinking about. Here we go. We're gonna talk about the what are your leadership truths for 2025 and beyond, maybe. We're
Mm-hmm.
limited to 2025, but it seems like a good place to start. There's lots going on, and whilst we don't want to end up commenting on the world at large, I think what we do want to do is just for ourselves remind ourselves that we are leadership coaches and we are passionate about what we do in helping people to become better leaders of themselves and other people, and that we do that through our work as coaches and also through our work at Change Innovators and the New World Leadership Program. So we really want people to have a look at that as well, see if it might be helpful for them. So let's kick it off. Let's get to the first question. Do leaders need to understand their own truths enough to live with curiosity and not judgment? That's an interesting question. Should we unpack it a little bit? What do you think, Dawna? Do you think leaders need to understand their own truths enough to live with curiosity, not judgment? Is it a yes and no? Maybe.
That space of when I see that question, it makes me think about like understand your own truth. So for some people may say like, what does that mean? Like my truth is what I know. So if I know it, then it must be true. And so the ability, I take it back to that emotional intelligence perspective and think about the reality testing. Like, do I understand my own biases? Or do I understand my truths or my biases? I'll let you decide the language you like. Do I understand like what they are and how they impact the way I choose to show up, and maybe how they impact how I interact with people, and then also how other people interaction with me might be?
Yeah, I get there's a question. I think you and I were involved in a conversation the other day. Maybe it was with other people as well. But how do we know what we know?
Right.
It's not very common, but I've heard people say that they've learned about leadership and maybe management, but leadership from people when they get inducted into their organizations. So they follow certain people who try to say, this is the way we do things around here. If I was you, I would do this kind of thing. And sometimes the narrative around leadership can get set, but it's not necessarily set from your own perspective. It's set from somebody else's perspective, their own truth.
But even if you take like this morning, I just came off of a volunteer board meeting, a volunteer board meeting training. And the question I put out to the board as the board chair was the idea of, could we consider the fact that we all have a different definition of the word transparent? Because my own truth of transparency and your definition or your way of looking at the word transparency. So my own truth is, yes, I could go to books and I can have different ideas and I can tell you how meetings are run, potentially, right? But the ability for me to even understand that a word that I choose to use has a definition that I bring to the table, but that definition could be very different. And I often suspect now, based on doing this work, that your definition is different. Like now I am more curious to know about your word choice, which a decade ago or a little bit more, I would have assumed that the word transparency meant one thing. That's just an example I'm using because it came up this morning. And so the relevance of this topic is when I'm sitting down and I'm saying to someone, that what I perceive something, my truth about a situation, am I able to ask questions in a way that I'm comfortable, that's mutually beneficial to our relationship, and also will carry the project forward or our relationship forward.
So that's really interesting. So let's take an example to get back to the question then. So do leaders need to understand their own truth enough to live with curiosity? So if you go into a meeting and say, look, I'm being transparent, why aren't you being transparent? That's a classic example of leading with judgment. Yeah, I'm being transparent. Why aren't you being transparent? As opposed to something like, well, from my point of view, I'm trying to be transparent. Is that working for you as well? Do you think our version of transparent is the same thing? That's a very different discussion from me trying to say, this is how it is, right?
Yeah, it's a dynamics. Like, so when someone says a word, and we know in coaching, staying with their word or their thought, and the ability to be able to say, well, could you help me understand that better? Could you explain to me what that might mean to you? I have a definition of that word, but I'd love to know what that word means to you. Not paraphrasing, not trying to control it. Sometimes people want these things they want to try and control. But when you really go into it to create a space for everybody else, then we can be curious. But being curious also means that you might ask a question that seems simple and you wonder what image people will have of you. So if you're concerned about curiosity, I think one of the things sometimes this is my own judgment bias, but I wonder sometimes if the reason we're not as curious as we could be is because we don't want to be seen as we don't know.
That's right. Yeah.
So if I ask a question, people are going to assume I don't know. But in reality, that's not the reason I'm asking the question. I might have a wealth of knowledge, but I'm really curious to know what I don't know.
Yeah. And that takes a certain level of confidence, right? I'm going to ask a question. I'm saying it's okay. If I ask a question and I'm in a leadership position and it's a genuine question, I'm actually communicating that it's okay to not know the answer to everything. Whereas if I'm in a different mode, I'm communicating that as a leader, you have to know the answer to everything. So it's, and you have to be open to the possibility that your truth may not be the truth, because the truth might be, even for a moment in time, a shared understanding, but even a shared understanding that you move forward on might still not be the truth, because other people have a perspective which may be different. So we kind of move forward on what you might call agreement about something, but agreements in themselves are only perspectives, collective truths maybe, that are open to the possibility of not being shared by others. And sometimes.
And then what do we do as a leader when we find that, right? So that comment you made. So when you find out your truths aren't, I apologize, I want to use your word, Lee, and I just forgot it. Your truths aren't that word you used.
Yeah.
That ability for you then to sit in a space of collaboration versus confrontation.
Yeah. And it can have a really powerful impact. So we've got another question. We can come back to this one. So let's have a little think about this one. What does it mean when leaders talk in facts rather than perspectives? I like this question.
Me too. I like this one. This one was my. What did you like about it?
I liked it. What do I like about it? I like it because it's easy to spot when you choose to kind of observe and you listen to yourself and to others, and people are talking factitiously. This is how it is. It's like that. Rather than this is how I see it. Is it possible that my perspective is the same as your perspective? So we're using a slightly different language, and talking in facts can be really interesting because it can shut other people down. This is how it is. I'm the boss.
And are facts always numbers? Are facts always numbers?
No. They're not always numbers.
Because I think some people might go like, well, I don't talk in numbers. That's the accountant on the team. But this concept of facts can be those absolute words, right? Those 0 or 100, or, the right way to do it, or my way to do it. Like that concept. And I'll let you decipher when not my way to do it's a perspective versus a fact. That's an interesting dynamic conversation. But the idea of it is, I think initially when people think of facts, they go, I don't talk in facts. But we do talk in facts in different ways as a leader. And do we understand what that does to other people?
So a way to look at it is, I could say there are no facts. That's talking in facts. Or I could say it's possible that there are no facts, in which I'm giving a perspective.
Yeah, or I assume for myself, like I try and catch myself when I talk in absolutes.
Yeah, talking in absolutes. I like the fact talking in absolutes. There we go. That's a different way of putting it, right?
That's my way of thinking about this question, right? This is my way of understanding if I'm being curious or not, or how am I positioning it, or why am I positioning something in the way I'm talking. So when I do talk in absolutes, does it foster creativity? Does it foster collaboration? Does it foster empathy? Does it foster dialogue? And if it's not doing those things, am I happy with the way I'm communicating? That's my question. Like, am I happy about the impact or influence that I'm having on other people? Because that's the choice I get to make every day. Like, what impact do I want to have on myself? And what impact or what energy or what space do I want to create when I walk into other people's Zoom spaces, LinkedIn space like this, or into a room with someone, right?
Yeah, I think what you've just made me, what you've just triggered in my head is that sometimes talking in absolutes. Let's use that word instead. If I talk in absolutes as a leader, then it makes me feel better, but it might make not everybody else feel better, because sometimes people feel that they have to control things in order to move it along, rather than to not control things and allow that space for others to explore. And going back to the first question, if you're uncertain of your own truth, but you are actually pretending that you are, I don't really know, but I'm going to talk in absolutes anyway, because that's how I feel I need to be. What are you communicating at every level? Because people are really, really good at spotting that, right? They're really good at hearing the complete opposite of what it is you're actually trying to say, because they can kind of read through the lack of confidence and the lack of truth. Being truly aligned and connected with who you are as a leader can really come out if you're not fully aware of the fact that that's happening. And other people pick it up differently. If you're open about it and say I don't know, people kind of say, oh, it was interesting, Lee or Dawna didn't really know, and they were open about that. It means that we don't have to know everything. Whereas if I'm in there saying, well, I think this is how we need to move forward, because this is how we need to move forward, then people might say, well, we didn't really give that much reflection. It was a done deal before we even started the conversation. So, I'm not going to own it in the same way. Maybe, I don't know. Just having a stream of consciousness there. What do you think?
For sure. There's a comment. There was one of the comments in there I'd like to pull out if I could, and that made me think about that perspective. So, when we think about what's a fact versus a perspective, like a fact is the way we work together. Like, what was good yesterday doesn't mean it's going to be good tomorrow. And that idea that we know, right? Like, we don't really know. We know very little, because if we stay open to the idea that there's different ways of doing things and there's different ways of working with people as a leader, then what we're doing is we're creating space for that person sitting in front of us to actually show up differently. So instead of saying or assuming the way you and I have always worked together, well, it's just the way Lee and I do this, me taking an individual taking the time and effort to say, the way we did it the other way, is there any adjustments or changes that you'd like? You're allowing different perspectives to come in. So you're using facts based on how we've worked together. And then we're taking this concept of facts and perspective and being curious, asking opportunities for adjustments between both of us, right? And that ability to be able to do that.
And one of the ways to be curious is, rather than being curious about other people, is being curious about yourself.
Yes.
Is it possible that my perspective on this is not quite where it needs to be, or am I really open to hearing something different from what I think? Am I really open to that?
Yeah. Am I really open to it? Because by being open to it, what does that mean? That I might need to start to understand more about why my word is, why is my feet in cement? When I feel like my feet are in cement, I know for sure that I am not bringing a new perspective. I'm not even open to it. So when my feet get in, that's my analogy for myself. When my feet get like that in work, in relationships, in my community work I do, even in the way I need to live my life, when I feel like that, it's like how come? Why am I doing that?
Why am I doing it? Yeah. Why am I? That's a really good question, isn't it? If you sat back and said, why am I doing that? In a curious way rather than a judgmental way.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's because it's just the way, like, there's so many different reasons, and we don't need to, but we're going to leave that question for individuals to ponder. But why am I doing that? And why do I keep doing it? Do you know what I mean? Like, why do I keep doing it? If we want to create space for others to be able to participate we have to choose as leaders, and I think everyone is a leader in their own life. I think we're a leader. A leader is a skill set. We definitely have titles in the workplace, but individuals who are leaders show up in a certain way. They sort of feel like their voice can be heard. There's different things they can do. But if we consider that we're all leaders in our life, why am I doing that? Why am I organizing my day? Why am I assuming a relationship a certain way? Why am I assuming things? Why do I? It can really create an opportunity, but can also create difficulties, because now you're starting to maybe question things.
Why am I chairing every meeting? Why do I have to? I mean, one of my old favorites was for me personally, why do I always have to say something after somebody else has said something?
Yeah, well, I know that's it. That's that's definitely one for me. I ponder all the time, right? Where does that come from? How come? But to understand, maybe, like, one of the things I like to say to people, one of the things I like to share with people is that when you do profiles and you look at them, I like to really honor how your profile has potentially allowed you to be who you are today.
Agreed.
Because there's a potential, and I know for my EQ, the reason, like, the potential of the way it is, has allowed me to thrive for many years. Now, over other decades and more self-reflection, you're sort of realizing maybe there's a different perspective, right? Different thoughts you can bring to situations, and things can be done differently. But I always like to honor my profile, because it has allowed me to thrive and succeed, or survive even, potentially, right?
Yeah. This is, this is so timely for me, because I've been doing a lot of facilitating feedback around a lot of these EQI 2.0 emotional intelligence psychometrics that we use, which is what we're referring to. And I ask people when they do them to think about just how do you feel when you've read it? I want them to engage with it emotionally, not what do you think, how do you feel? And it's actually interesting, because a lot of people, some people are saying, it's fairly accurate, but some people say they attach a negativity to it. They attach a negativity to understanding that maybe, their emotional intelligence, as it's been tested, isn't as high as they thought it was. Maybe they've never even considered it before. They've never had a test like that. And I always try to leave people in with a better understanding. That's the whole reason why we do the the debriefs. But what you've just said is absolutely right. If you are lower on a particular EQ component, for example, people love you for that. If we were all the same, then it would be really, it'd be very, very different. But the fact that you may be really good at, or not good at, but you pay more attention to these things and less attention to these things, make you unique, and that's why people love you. And then it's your choice as to whether or not you want to change things around, because if you start changing things around, then the world becomes different. Should we get on to this last question, because I think this sort of brings us into it, is what might some universal truths be related to human connection? We're all about human connection, right? That's what Change Innovators and us as the kind of leaders of that organization and coaches are about. So let's think about some universal truths. I'll kick off with one. I think I'm going to kick off with two. I think there are some universal truths that are: one, we all want to be loved, and two, that we all want to feel like we belong. And I think that is very true of organizations, but I think it's very true at a basic human level. We want to be loved, and to be loved, to be able to love, I think we also need to learn how to love ourselves. And in exactly the same way that you were saying, there's no point looking at an EQI 2.0 and then saying, oh, I'm terrible, I am. But it's okay, I'll go and I'll be really empathetic with somebody else. I'll wrap empathy around my own disappointment, because it just doesn't work. And this idea of belonging, people want to belong. I think it's really basic. There we go. That's my universal truth. So I think there are some.
Can I add to the second one in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can disagree if you like. Please do.
We're going to do an amendment on the motion. So what we're going to do is we want to belong as we are. Nobody wants to be changed. Some people might. Some people might like to reflect and grow and develop, but wherever they are today, we want to appreciate the person sitting in front of us for who they are. Just that ability to just to really think about that. Like, how do I appreciate who the person is, and have conversations from that part about that human connection. And then if I need to ask someone to step into something that's a stretch for them, understanding it's a stretch for them. So it's not that, like, as I think about like different relationships or different things, I might ask people to do something that's not their go-to, as I would refer to it. It's not their go-to, but I would appreciate if they would step into that because of something I want to enjoy with them, or an opportunity at work I'd like us to take part in. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's a real important part of it is just who is the person in front of you and where are they at? You and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Where are they at? And then how do I just honor the person in front of me?
And I think where there's telltale signs are when you're having conversations with people, and it's a really simple thing. We often will go to changing the outside world rather than changing our inner world. So we might have the performance reviews, and we might say, if you could just be a little bit more like this and a little bit less like that, everything would be better for you. And so my reflection is that sometimes that is about the leader feeling better. If from my perspective, if you were more like this and less like that, the world would be a better place. So if you could go and do all the work so that I don't have to, so that I feel better, that would be great. Another way of looking at that is that, why is it that I think that it would be better if you were more like that and less like that? And let's have a discussion about whether that is real. So what do you think? And and then if the other person says, well, I don't see it that way, I see it like this, I think I should be the opposite. I think I should be more like what you think I'm less of, and less like what you think I should be more of. Can we get into that discussion? And then not to lead with judgment, but to lead with curiosity. Okay, let's get into it. Let's have a little discussion about that. Because you're honoring both parties. You're honoring yourself in your ability to be open and learn, and you're respecting the individual for where they're at and their own perspective. Nobody, we often talk about the difference between leadership and management, right? And I think it's a real error when people think that they can lean into managing other people's behavior and managing other people's emotional reactions to things. Do you know what I mean? You can point them out,
but they can't. They do manage them, because when I'm in a room with someone and like they're giving absolutes all the time, and it's like, okay, we'll just not ask any questions, right? And you almost become, I mean, I can't speak for other people, but when it's been consistent and it goes on for a long period of time, and it's like, it's not going to change. I don't know what it does for you, but it does the opposite of belonging for me. It does the opposite of me engaging in conversation, and it does the exact opposite of me being my authentic self. Because for me, I love when I walk into a room and I love making connections. Like, I really enjoy connecting with people and kind of know what's of interest to them right now, right? Like, what are you doing? What's keeping you? What are you enjoying these days that you're doing, right?
And
so it's people might say they lead, but people like to use that leadership word, but that the management can really come into that if you're talking in those facts. Those absolutes.
And you know that about yourself. You know that you like to find out a little bit more about people, and you also know, I think, that there are other people that don't really like you or others to find out stuff about them. So and it's just being aware of that and knowing your own truth, I suppose. Now we're at the 24 minutes mark. So I think probably we've given people enough to have a think about. And
so on top of these live streams, we also post different writings and information on changeinnovators.com LinkedIn page. So if you'd like to follow us there, that would be great. Lee and I both love coaching. As you can tell, we're on two different sides of the pond. And one of the things that we truly do enjoy is the ability to stop and explore ideas without any final outcome. So if you're okay with that kind of stuff, that kind of opportunity, we would love to connect with you. So have a great day. All the best in 2025, Lee.
And on that happy note, we're going to leave it nice and open.
Ciao.
Hopefully we'll see you soon.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.